Saulot is an antediluvian credited with creating 2 clans. He's the only antediluvian that I'm aware of that has created more than 1 lineage. The only exception to this being Cain, the original vampire who made all of them. Saulot had some interesting friends. He had some powerful enemies. And unfortunately, those enemies were his undoing. Today's video is brought to you by me, and of course my patrons who voted on this video topic for today. Or this month rather. If you would like to get a say in what I produce next, please consider joining me over on Patreon. The support is greatly appreciated. Now, as a person and as a vampire, Saulot was a difficult guy to peg down. Wherever he traveled, he tried to keep a low profile, and generally any history containing anything about him has been erased. He did go by several names throughout history, and in the East, he was known as Saulot. He was also known as the Dragon and the Warlord. Now, when Saulot was diablerized in 1133, his main progeny, the Salubri, specifically the warrior caste and the healer caste, they were nearly destroyed after his diablery. It is widely believed that the antediluvian Tremere himself diablerized Saulot, although the circumstances and the situations around that, some believe that he was diablerized by Tzimisce. Now, Saulot had some adventures in the East. However, during his time there, he was known by a different name, one that I've already mentioned, Saulot. Now, the Wan Kui, and I'm probably pronouncing that one wrong as well, they did not have a very high opinion of Saulot or the vampires associated to him. Now, the Wan Kui, that name literally translates to 10,000 demons. And this was the old title for the Kuai-Jin. It was kind of a catch-all name that covered all the vampire variants of the East. Now, to the Eastern vampires, or the Wan Kui, the name Saulot means something to them. He was a student of Zhu. Zhu was a very renowned philosopher. He was the first to discover the 5 dharmas, or paths of enlightenment, and he recorded all of his teachings in some books known as the Blood Sutras. Zhu existed sometime during the Third Age. The life that he lived was in such exemplary balance between his human side and his bestial side, he became a form of role model, something to strive for other vampires. He was also the first to reach the state of Golconda. Saulot was able to learn from Zhu, and he adopted and brought in his teachings. He learned them and he stole them. And the two of them ended up having a bit of a falling out. And Saulot, with his new teachings, his new information, he went on to go make a name for himself. This is where he found 2 individuals that he became rather enamored with. And when he eventually turned them, they formed their own lineages, their own family lines that still exist within the Eastern versions of the game today. The first line comes from Zhao Zhu. He was a scholar, someone very well learned, well versed, and great at deciphering old and ancient texts and the riddles that were contained within inside. Zhao Zhe was the other individual, and he was a very prominent thief, someone that had some skills that were very useful to Saulot. And it's from these 2 individuals that these family lines descend from. So Saulot, the thief, and the scholar, they toured all around the Middle Kingdoms, or the Eastern Kingdoms, and they stole so much information, ancient history, ancient relics, secret texts, and from this he divined his own path to Golconda. And it's because of these actions that the Kuai-Jin do not have a high opinion of Saulot or Saulot. In fact, whenever his name comes up in conversation, there's usually some epithet that's attached to it, like Saulot the traitor, Saulot the betrayer. The point is, they don't like him. Once Saulot had achieved his goals, he left the area and never really came back. Nobody missed him. Saulot and Malkav, the Malkavian antediluvian, they became pretty close friends. Now, the Malkavians, and possibly Malkav, they believe that Saulot is brothers to Set, the ancient Egyptian vampire. Whether this is true or not is up for discussion, but the Malkavians believed it, and maybe they thought somehow they could gain an upper hand or gain some mystical knowledge. What happens though is, at some point, Malkav grants Saulot the third eye. This will then become a hallmark identifier for those in the Salubri clan. Saulot is also tied to some darker history, specifically around the Bali clan. The short version of the Bali history and their creation goes that there were 3 demon worshippers. However, the story goes that an ancient vampire visited these infernals, these demon worshippers, and they tried to show off their power, but the ancient vampire wasn't impressed with the power or the display of their evilness, and he threw these 3 demon worshippers into a organ pit together, mixed with a little bit of his own vampiric blood. And this is how the Bali clan gets founded. To hear it from the Bali themselves, the stories go that the ancient vampire came from the east, and they believe that the ancient vampire was Saulot. Now, another interesting friend that Saulot made throughout history, when his Salubri warriors went to war with the Bali clan, he made friends with Hakim, the antediluvian of the Banu Hakim, or creator of the Assamites, as they would later become known as Banu Hakim. Hakim and his judges, they worked with the Salubri, but he never fully trusted Saulot. Saulot was just too focused on total destruction rather than trying to end this war. Hakim lived during the time of the first and second cities. He tried to make a safe place so that all the bickering vampires would just have a place to go and just check all that emotional baggage at the door. And then, of course, Saulot met Tremiere. They didn't really get along that well, and their history is a tumultuous history at best. Saulot had been pulling the wool over Tremiere's eyes. He'd been playing tricks on him, making him look like an idiot, and he'd been doing it for 8 centuries before Tremiere actually found out. Once he did find out, of course, he didn't take it very well, and he attempted to kill Saulot. And it wouldn't be until 1133 that, kind of by accident, a vampire hunting party belonging to the Tremiere, they found Saulot's resting place and diablerized him. So why did Saulot leave the first city in the first place? The story goes that Saulot was trying to quell the beast inside. He was having trouble reconciling his human side and the bestial side. They were just not coming into harmony. He was working with Malkav and with Set during this time, and they were focusing on meditation, on prayer, on different meditation techniques to try to bring peace and harmony to the inner self. The problem was, if it worked, it didn't work for very long. He had created the healer caste during this time, and these vampires were unique because they were focused solely on healing. For vampires and kindred society, they were uniquely compassionate. But it wasn't until after the Great Flood, or the Deluge, happened that he ended up going off to the east. Basically, at this time, he had given up on his meditation techniques and decided to go try something else. When Saulot returned, this is when he had his third eye, and he had his path to Golconda. And the Salubri took it upon themselves to become teachers as well as healers, to guide and teach others about the mastery of the beast inside themselves. And after Saulot returned, this is when you start seeing demonic forces rising towards the east. The vampire clan, the Bali, was responsible for this, and their unknown progenitor, at least at the time. It's at this point that conflict was just bound to happen, so Saulot made another child, someone by the name of Samiel, who became the first of the warrior caste of the Salubri. The wars went on for a very long time, until the end of the second city, when basically it collapsed. When the war was done, the Salubri had won, but they had also won at great cost. Their numbers were basically gone. Saulot left the clan and went on a pilgrimage on his own to teach the ways of Golconda. The longer he ventured out and did more of his teachings, the longer he took for rest when he wasn't teaching. And it wasn't until shortly after the crucifixion that Saulot disappeared from history entirely, until he was found again in 1133 and diablerized by Tremiere. And the Tremiere clan, after this, began a propaganda campaign to slander the Salubri clan, and they were eventually ostracized from kindred society. Once they were well-respected members of the vampire society, now they were outcasts, all thanks to Tremiere. Now, in the modern night setting, Saulot made a return. In 1998, he was able to take control of Tremir's body. The essence of him from his blood remained, and it was a long, hard-fought battle, but he did gain control of Tremir's body. Saulot escaped and has created a new mortal form for himself and is now in hiding in the modern night somewhere. Or so the stories go. Saulot's story and history has changed throughout the games in different versions of Vampire the Masquerade. If you want to learn what's happened with this Salubri clan, then please click on the video on your screen now. Thank you to all of my patrons who continue to support me and the channel. All of your support is greatly appreciated. My name's Nathaniel. Thanks for stopping by, everyone.